Hello! Or should I say, hello, it's me, Mario. When I was getting ready for the shoot this morning, I couldn't find my my Cars.co.za cap, so I had to improvise. But let's not be too silly, because today is a good day. I have always wanted an RS4. I've always thought they're wonderful cars. They've just got such a great reputation, and I finally made it happen. Welcome to the inside of my Audi RS4.
Think of a car, any car. Yes, Cars.co.za. Let's find what moves you.
So I've been looking for one for a long time, and this one came up actually on Marketplace. I'm always a little bit nervous about Marketplace, but I went to meet the owner. He was the third generation of professional racing drivers. So his grandfather was Wally Dolenchek, who raced, and then his dad was Wally Dolenchek Jr., who raced against legends like Dion Hubert, for instance. And now Troy Dolenchek, who bought this car with his winnings from winning Formula Ford, he was selling his car. So it came from a really good family, and I trusted them, and we went over the service history, and they'd done quite a lot of work on the car. Then I took it to Magic Alec at Munich Performance Center. Wonderful guy, wonderful team who looks after all my cars for me. We did a pre-purchase inspection, we got under the car, we took it for a nice drive as well, and Alec gave me the thumbs up. And here it is, my first ever Audi. And it's not a bad way to start, is it? Now this particular example is bone stock as it left the factory, except we discovered when we got under it that it has been decatted, but it still has the original Audi back boxes, the resonators, the original branches. And I didn't know this, but when you hit the sport mode, two very cool things happen. So these Recaro seats were an optional extra. It was a 60 grand extra. And when you hit sport mode, it's got air bolsters by your hips and by your side, and they tighten on you when you're in sport mode. Now, the first time I hit sport mode, I got quite a fright, because I didn't know that was going to happen. The other cool thing that happens is the exhaust flaps open. So it's got actuators in both back boxes, and then you get this much bassier rumble from the engine. And my word, am I experiencing purchase satisfaction from this car. So it's on 7-year-old tires. They're not great tires, so I'm gonna have to change those. I've been getting some quotes, and I can get Michelin Pilot 4Ss, Sport 4Ss for the car. But I mean, with Quattro, there's so much traction that I don't really have to worry too much. So this car also came with the optional 19s, which is the wheels I wanted. I wanted these seats. It's got the Bose sound system. It's a really high spec car. And the driving experience, I mean, these engines weren't known for losing power over years. So in the second part of this video, I'll take you through what to look out for, how to test drive the car, and what preventative maintenance you need to do on the car to make sure that you don't have any future issues. And at the end of the video, I'll also give you pricing, parts pricing from Audi and aftermarket pricing. And then the big job we need to discuss, timing chains. Yeah, no, the timing chains are quite expensive. So what's the driving experience like? It's epic. I really like fast sedans. So far I've had an E39 M5, I've got a C63 AMG W204. I had a V10 M5, which I just sold actually. I feel like fast sedans, especially manuals, big V8, naturally aspirated V8, is the best of all worlds. They're practical, they're not as intimidating to drive as a low slung sports car. I mean, obviously, you know, I'd love a Porsche or something like that, and cars like the new Supra are awesome, but I just feel more in control in a sedan. And then you can take your mates along, they're comfortable in the back, you got a big boot. I just feel like sports sedans from the 2000s are the hero cars of that era, and they're the hero cars of now as well, because they're starting and they're becoming affordable. Well, they've been affordable for a while, but they're also appreciating quite nicely. I mean, on my M5, I could pretty much double my money right now. based on the last offer I got, but I'm absolutely not interested in selling that car or my C63. I love those cars to bits. But sorry, that was a very long-winded way of me telling you that this car feels very similar in terms of its power delivery to my E39 M5. Very, very similar power outputs as well. 309 kilowatts, which is about 420 horsepower. 530 Newton meters. The E39 had 500, but this car is a bit lighter. It's about 100 kgs lighter. So it does feel a bit more agile. It does feel a little bit lighter on its feet. I've got this guy on a Harley Davidson chasing me. It looks like he wants to have some fun. All right, brah, let's do a third gear pull. Let's see what you got. Now peak power is at 7750 RPM and the engine's red line is at 8250 RPM. Oh, I love naturally aspirated engines. I mean, they don't feel as fast as turbocharged cars, because with a turbocharged car you get that sort of elastic acceleration, whereas this is just purely linear. But the engine is so controllable. You know what it's doing all the time. You can just manage that power with your left and your right foot and your left hand. And I love dials. I'm so annoyed about this modern era with a screen in front of you and fake dials, and the new BMWs with that stupid diamond rev counter. Just give me dials. I don't mind a touchscreen infotainment system, but in front of me, I want dials. And these are some of the sexiest dials in motoring history. There's quite a few things I didn't appreciate about this car, because this particular car was the first RS4 I ever drove. One, the very notchy gearbox, short throw gearbox as well. Maybe not as short as something like a Mazda, like an MX-5 or an RX-7, or an S2000 Honda maybe, but still short enough, nice and notchy. Hydraulic steering is super direct, tons of feedback. But what's great about this engine, and this is what you get from displacement, is you get low down torque. So all 530 Newton meters are available from 2250 RPM. And that just means that you just ride this wave of torque. I think this is not only one of the best Audis ever made, if not the best, but I think this is one of the best cars ever made. Always wanted one, and I'm not sure I ever truly believed I'd get one. Anyway, before I get emotional here, let's head back to the studio, and I'll tell you some things, important things you need to know when searching for an RS4 and doing the test drive. Thanks, Ciro. Now on to some important information like parts pricing and how to test drive the car. And there's 3 important things that you need to test when you first approach an Audi RS4. Let's start with what's under the bonnet. Wow, that was a really powerful thud there. It's like the bonnet's open now. So what you want to do, the biggest expense on this engine is the timing chain, because the engine has to come out. So Audi, in their infinite wisdom, they put 3 timing chains on this engine, and guess where they put them? At the back of the engine, between the gearbox, up against the firewall. So all that has to come out. And I'll give you the pricing for that in a little bit. But the only way to tell if the timing chains need to be redone, you have to start the car completely cold. So say to the seller, I'm coming to look at the car, do not warm the car up. Open the bonnet, stick your ear here, and get the seller to crank the car. And if you hear any sort of rattle, that means the timing chains have to be redone. Now, the second thing you have to look for when you're test driving, push the steering wheel all the way lock to lock and just edge the car forward a little bit. And if you hear knocking, that means that the hydraulic cross-axle suspension dampers, yes, got that right, those will need to be replaced. Now, we actually can't find pricing for that, but let's just say it's very expensive. If we do find it after filming, we'll put it on the screen. And lastly, of course, big one, the clutch. Make sure it's not slipping. The Quattro drivetrain obviously is super grippy, so it pushes a lot of stress through the clutch, and it does tend to go at around the 100,000 kilometer mark. I'll give you the price for that in just a sec. Thanks, Ciro. Now let's talk about parts pricing. So I spoke to an RS4 owner before I bought this car, and he put a lot of money into it. And he said the clutch was 60,000 Rand. And maybe I misheard him because it's actually 16,000 Rand from Audi. You can get one from Goldwagen for 5,500. Front discs probably need to be replaced if they can't be skimmed. Those are pretty big. 22,000, you can only get them from Audi. Now the front calipers are actually quite interesting. They take 2 pads per caliper, so you need 4 of them. That's going to cost you 12 from Audi, but 3.5 from Goldwagen. Then the aircon compressor, which interestingly is not working on my car. I did pick that up on the test drive though, so I didn't know about it. That's going to cost me 36,000 Rand from Audi. However, 20,000 Rand from Goldwagen, so that's probably where I'll be going. Right, let's get on to the big one, timing chain. Now this engine has quad VANOS. Well, it's not really VANOS, that's BMW's thing, but you know what I mean. It's got quad variable valve timing. So if you need to do the timing chain alone, that's 21 grand, but it's a big labor cost because, as I mentioned, engine has to come out. However, if you need to do timing chain and VANOS, which you might as well do while you're in there, then you're looking at 85,000 Rands worth of parts, and the parts have to come from Germany, and there is no aftermarket equivalent. The other 2 things you might have to do, and thankfully they've been done on my car, you might need to get injectors, which you can only get from Audi, that's 36,000 Rand, and you might need to get coils, 16,000 Rand from Audi, 4,700 Rand from Goldwagen. Now, we'll investigate some labor prices. We'll put that on the screen as well, so you have a complete idea of what it's going to cost if you need to do all these jobs on your RS4. Thanks, Ciro. Onto the interior. Now, these interiors actually wore quite well. For instance, you don't have to worry about the headliner. That's really good quality. All of this is okay, although mine has a tiny little crack, which is going to bother me. I'll probably have to get that replaced at some stage. The steering wheel wore really well. It actually looks almost brand new, actually. And quite interestingly, this is the steering wheel from the original Lamborghini Gallardo, just with a Audi badge on the front. What hasn't worn well, however, is the gear knob. Now, obviously being a manual, the knob receives a lot of action. And it also looks like one of the previous knob handlers here was married and his ring has scratched the top of the gear stick here. So definitely going to get that replaced. Also want to replace the start button. That's worn a little bit as well. Now, a real highlight of this car, and when you're shopping for an RS4, you want to ask the seller for interior pictures because you really want these Recaro seats. Now, they were a 43,000 Rand option back in the day. They were an optional extra, but they're extremely cool. Now, something you also want to check is the drinks holder, because that can go. This one, thankfully, cooperate. There it is. Yeah, you just gotta talk to it gently, talk to it nicely, like that. There we go. See, absolutely nothing wrong. The other thing you want to check is the park distance control at the rear. That can sometimes fail. However, it is just a loose plug most of the time. It's just kind of come out, and you just need to play around with it, get that back in. As I mentioned, my aircon isn't working. The way you tell that is if the light on economy is stuck on. So when you put auto and that stays on, that means that your aircon is unfortunately a thing of the past. That's going to be quite expensive. Nothing else to really worry about, but what was a nice optional extra back in the day was the tech pack for an extra 30 grand, and that gave you the Audi Symphony system and the big Bose sound system. Right, there we go. That wraps up our studio scene where we bring it into the Cars.co.za Cape Town office, light up the car nicely, and then I point at things and tell you how expensive it's going to be if it breaks. Back to you, Ciro, on Signal Hill. So there we go. There's your parts pricing. There's how much it costs to get these cars right. I paid $390 for mine. It's got 129 on the clock. And the thing is, like Magic Alex said, these cars really can burn you. You have to be very careful with these cars. You have to have a good, frank discussion with the owner or the seller about what's been done, what hasn't been done. It's not important to think that something's going to break on this car. You want to know what's going to break, or what's already broken, or what hasn't been done. So buy carefully. But I mean, for 390 grand, the bang for buck here is just off the charts. One of the interesting developments that they made for this car was two things to do with the suspension and the Quattro. So this was a revised Quattro setup with front diff, center diff, self-locking center diff, and a rear diff. And they set up the bias of the Quattro to be rear. So it's 60 rear, 40 front. So sometimes when you're hooning, you actually get a little bit of play at the back, which is quite nice. I mean, it's not a BMW, but you know, it's not as front nose heavy and understeery as I was expecting it to be. The other innovation here was cross-linked hydraulic dampers. So front left is hydraulically linked to rear right and vice versa. And that's one of the reasons why this car corners so flat. Now, that system does tend to fail, and it's expensive. And what usually owners do is they just don't bother, and you just sort of tear out that system, put in normal coil springs, coilovers, and you get rid of the problem. But then you sort of lose that really nice flatness through the corners. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't make a huge difference, and it would make a huge difference to your bank account. So it's probably just, if it's leaking that system, if the valves have gone or the hydraulic pumps have gone, probably just worth ripping the system out. And then you save weight. Save money, save weight. So a lot of people think I'm a bit nuts for investing and buying these old performance cars, which are potentially expensive to fix and might just explode on you and, you know, absolutely ruin you financially. But, you know, so far so good. And I've actually made quite a bit of money on the cars I've sold as well, so that's been pretty cool. But to be honest, I actually don't really care if I lose the money, if I don't lose too much, or, you know, the car needs repairs, because I get so much joy out of these cars. They make me so happy. You know, I always say, if you want to look at your money, buy a painting. But if you want to enjoy your money, and, you know, get a cool old car. There's so much joy in this, and the car community in South Africa is so awesome. Everyone helps each other out. You meet fantastic people. You know, you can't drive an investment or a painting over Franschhoek Pass on a Sunday morning with your mates. But you can do that in an Audi RS4. In a world where a 1 liter Polo costs close to 500 grand, you can buy a 4.2 liter V8 manual sedan. And I know which one I would pick every single time.
What's the car with Cars.co.za? Yes, just look at Zonda and his XXX pics. One arm on the steering wheel and the other flexing those puppies in his side mirror. Yeah, but now think of a car, any car. Yes, we have it. Cars.co.za. Let's find what moves you.